the house could collapse. In other words, what he was trying to say was, if Gandhi had not brought a sense of shame on us about untouchability, and if Ambedkar had not brought courage in the Dalits to denounce us in self-respect, see, arouse self-respect of the Dalits, and a sense of shame of the Gandhi aroused a sense of shame among us, upper caste. He gave courage to the lower caste. The two together worked in India. One by itself could not have worked. The two, so one complements the other. This is how his imagination worked. He is a contemporary of mine, and he makes many of these points through metaphorical stories of this kind. And that is a gift that you have if you don't forget the non-literate background you come from. Because the non-literates use more metaphors than literates do. And hence, many of us writers have to recover that state of mind of the non-literate and that state of mind of a child which begins to play with words. The child and the primitive. They have to enter into literature in order to engineer it. Particularly when it becomes too civilized and too soft and too gentlemanly, somebody has to break it. And I think the Dalit writers in Maharashtra try to break that respectfulness of the Marathi language with such disrespectful words which are a part of the language. I think this is one way of renewing the energy of languages. And this renewal is always done by the lowest of the low in every society. And that is being done by the Dalits. And hence, the first important thing is you should have a non-hegemonic idea of Indian literature, not make the written thing superior to that which is not written, not make that. So oral epics also become a part of our literary heritage. And the Dalit contribution in that way is not less than what you find in the radical progressive thinkers have been able to speak through poetry, through myths, because this is a much greater instrument of fight than political protest. It's a deeper political protest. That is because in all the literature, there is no mention of the nation. There is mention of the community also. They think in terms of a community rather than a nation. So in all the literature epics, you find the notion of a community, not of a nation. And they also participate in the two main epics, Ramayana and Makkale. Which are these two languages known everywhere in India? Ramayana and Makkale. Known everywhere. So they are almost like two languages. And Ramayana came to Karnataka to collect stories from the lower classes and so on. Variations of Ramayana and Makkale. And one of the variations that he collected, I always quote it, and now I will quote it again. This is a moral Ramayana. It is often played by the lowest of the low and Dalits also. What happens? Ram has to go to Pakistan. And Sita says, I will also go to Pakistan. Ram says, you are a princess, you are not fit to go to the palace. There are wild animals and you can't bear them. And then Sita argues, and Rama has a counter argument. And in the end, this non-literate Sita says, in every Ramayana, Sita goes to the palace. How can you deny it to me? Look at this intertextuality. That means she can't read the other Ramayana, but she knows that there is another Ramayana written by one where Sita goes into the palace. So this is something known. And so these variations make the known a part of the oral text. And a very philosophical Vachanakar called Allama is one of the great poets of the world for me in Allama. And Basava is also a Brahmin who gives up his Yajnapavid and takes the Shiva Diksha and then becomes the leader of this movement where they have no caste. They have gone beyond caste barriers. And so They say that Basava got a Brahmin girl married to a Dalit young man in 12th century. This led to a revolt, a big revolt, and there are many stories, that Basava must have committed suicide, but we don't say he committed suicide, we say he became Andarthan. Shiva took him away. And he was a great fighter, of that kind. And also those they were all thrown out of the kingdom, so they went to Ulavi, there where they survived. They went away. But they stuck on to this great idea of equality, no caste. You know that famous poem of Basava, who goes against all temples. He says, the rich will build temples for Shiva. What can I, a poor man, do? He says, my hands are the pillars, my legs are the pillars, and my garbha is the garbhagudi. My body itself is a temple. And then he concludes it by saying, something wonderful. There are two words in Kannada and also in every language. I think one is sthavara, the other is jangama. Jangama comes from the word go, that which moves, forever moves. Jangama. Sthavara, still, is also a related word. Sthavara, that which is permanent. We think that temple is permanent. Jangama is only somebody who loves God. And Basava concludes, Sthavara kalivuntu, Jangama kalivida. Sthavara can be destroyed, but Jangama can never be destroyed. There will always be another Jangama. So there again, what is everyday life? The human body. The body itself becomes a temple. So that was a great movement. But like all great movements in India, any revolutionary movement after a while, when it enjoys power, it loses its revolutionary character. We see it in India today and India in the past also. So when it lost its fervor, what happened was tragic. The Dalits who believed in this new dharma, because it gave them equality and so on, were very disappointed and also disillusioned, and they have created two great epics, oral epics in Kannada. They are being collected now, but they are still performed. They are performed through dance, through singing, on festive occasions. So, I will tell you what they are. One is Malamadeshwara, which has been translated into English also by the Sahitya Academy now, Malamadeshwara. And much more wonderful than that is a Manteswami story. Manteswami. Here, Manteswami is a Dalit, and he is equated with Allama. But with this difference, Allama was a Veerashaiva saint, but Manteswami is not a Veerashaiva saint, but he is a true Veerashaiva follower in his heart, the great spiritual ideal, equality and fraternity and so on. He carries in one hand a bucket of curd, toddy, and on his bhuja, on his shoulder, is a dead calf. The calf for his food and this curd in his hand. But he is Allama. There is a transformation of Allama into Manteswami. There are some wonderful stories. All the ideals of Allama. Allama also spoke in a Chatma Vakasha, in a very metaphorical language. You have to know the language in order to decipher. It is almost like Yeats inventing a new set of images, towards the end of his life through a vision. So also there are quite a few. One of these stories I will tell you. Here is a king who is very, king means, the Yajman, of that community, who is very haughty. And then he calls somebody who makes chappals and says, make me a chappal, in that. And this man is a Manteswami kind of person, makes a pair of sandals and gives it to him. And he puts his feet on the sandal, and the sandal begins to burn. Dear Nagaraj has written a wonderful book called on this theme, how the chappals that the lower caste man makes has the power to burn the whole leg. So he has Shiva in him. So this was a kind of an assertion that the lowest of the low made, that they were closer to the Shiva than the others. These two oral epics are popular in South Karnataka districts like Mysore, Mandya, Bengaluru. This was 14th and 15th century. The Veerashaiva movement was 12th century, and within 300 years they have reconstructed some Veerashaiva stories in terms of Dalit stories. So the metaphor is there and it speaks. So this was a kind of, if you read them, M.N. Srinivas might say, this is a process of Sanskritization. They are trying to come up in life, get dignity. Like nowadays, Dalits get their MA, MBBS, etc., get jobs and then come up, and they become a community for themselves. And they don't have much connection with their own community. That might have happened in the past also. And so, it is a kind of a Sanskritization, is one interpretation. But it's a wrong interpretation because they not only assert themselves in terms of the ideas that they had inherited of the upper caste, who also had belief in equality and so on, but there is a lot of critique of the hypocrisy of the upper caste. And also, they use a different kind of language. I will give you one example of how the language changes. There is a kind of kathana in Kannada, again 14th century, 15th century, called Shunya Sampadana. There are 3 versions of Shunya Sampadana, which describes the pilgrimage of Allama, meeting many people in the Veerashaiva movement, and then coming back after a while in order to climb the Shunya Simhasana, that great throne reserved for the wisest of the wise. But he is unrecognizable when he comes back because he has disheveled hair, dirty clothes, and he looks like a beggar. Only Basava recognizes him, but the other followers of Basava have already become upper class and they don't recognize him. So recognition becomes a theme. And so Mandya Swami also